I am delighted to welcome you, Kume. Thanks for being on our Leaders Who Care series.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's a pleasure to have this conversation with you.
You've got a super impressive background, so I definitely think we needed to share this with everybody. You're in London right now, right? Or in Ethiopia?
Actually, yes, I'm in Ethiopia.
That's right. I forgot. You are in Ethiopia now. So we were just chatting about how this is why Africa needs energies, because we're trying to find the light for you. But as I said, your smile shines through bright. So that's all the light we need. And great way to start now is if you could briefly introduce yourself, who you are, and then we'll get into more detail. How's that?
Perfect. Thanks, Mark. My name is Kume, born in Ethiopia, but then I spent all my life across the globe. So I call myself a global citizen. I grew up in Addis up to until high school. And then from then I moved to Canada, and that's where I did my undergraduate. Finished my university in computer science, and then been working on transformation projects, joining a tech company since when? It was in, I think, around 2006, 2007. For almost 15 years, I was in the airline industry working on digital transformation projects until I reached the UK. But then I lived in Singapore, Australia, the US, you name it, working on the airline industry. When I reached the UK, then I said, okay, I need to try to see if I can do something else. And did my graduate studies at Imperial College. And I finished my MBA there, focusing on entrepreneurship and economics. That's basically a bit of my background before I actually made a huge leap and moved to Ethiopia to do some crazy things.
Yeah, no, it's I love the fact we're connected through Canada. That works for me. That's exciting, and it's interesting. You kind of began your journey with education in Canada and the UK, right? As you mentioned, and I'd want to ask, like, how did that come to be? That it was Canada first of all, and how did it come to be that you're doing what you do? Like, what is your why? Why do you do what you do?
Why I moved to Canada? Canada comes across as a very peaceful, harmonious country. So I think that's the safest place that my parents thought they could send me and I could be okay and safe. Mm-hmm. That's where I started. And that's basically where I actually learned humility, to be honest, because, until you're 15, 14, you don't know anything. Until you're exposed to the real world, you're out of your family. And the area that I actually lived in Halifax, you can literally walk out and talk to anybody on the street. And people are very nice and generous. And they're, for me, more human than the huge urban cities that you come across. So that's basically where I discovered myself as well a little bit. And I built up myself and my character. And that's basically where I said also my environment. So for me, Canada has a big role in my life because it taught me some of the basic ingredients. But then moving forward from Canada, when you live in different countries, you learn different cultures, a different way of living, different working, different interacting. That actually also molded me to empathize with different cultures, different perspectives, and to basically expand my way of thinking. So actually my leadership came from, let's say, being exposed to different countries and different culture. But throughout that journey, in every project that I was involved in, my focus was all about society and people. So every project that I do, it's always been centric around people. So even if it's tech, it's all about how does tech empower people. So it's always a challenge because, especially working in this digital and tech area, you bring transformation and people like changes. So even bringing that leadership skill in terms of driving that change while everybody's comfortable with it is basically also something that requires empathy, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's something that an ingredient that's always been within me. So working on the transformation project, a lot of the things that I've done around is around people transformation, even if it's project. So after my master's at Imperial, a lot of the focus was how do I bring in grassroots changes? Because the industry that I was in was aviation industry, very distant from like what we call society and people. It was a lot of the B2B. So I was always looking for how do we bring it closer to the people? And that's why also when I joined my MBA, I looked into areas where I can actually see how I can bring in this B2B models or way of working into the B2B to C, so that actually any business that gets done is around people, right? So if you look at flights, for example, today people talk about flying A to B, but really flight is done to transport people from one side to another side, either for leisure, but then also more is about economical gain. But how do you create that economical gain? By actually making it available and equal for everyone. But today airlines, as you can see, is for the rich and the one that can afford it. So I really wanted to change that, but really the industry was bigger than mine. So after trying, so I left the industry and I said, I tried to see where I can go next to actually see if I can bring all this new tech to closer to the people so that it can actually transform people. So Africa was the obvious place because there is this mass scale, right? So that's basically when I decided, so where do I go to Africa? Obviously, the closest and the most comfortable and easiest place was home, which is Ethiopia. I think for a lot of people, it was a shock for me to return back because, you know, life is good in the West and you can get energy easily. You don't need to go around the house to find, you know, where you can find the, you know, right? Or even internet is like bloody tough. But you know, through challenges, there is always something that you can find, like you find that purpose, right? So for me, I thought by bringing myself here and actually changing people, I would find my purpose, right? So I decided I moved. It took me a couple of years to really look into where do I start, because you have to start. Also, I have like this big vision of like bringing all the society into a platform where they can interact freely. And there is no such thing called control, where people can actually exercise their freedom to do things, to transact, and to actually prosper. That's basically my ultimate goal, but I had to start somewhere. So it took me a couple of years to basically look, where do I start? How do I map my stakeholders so that, you know, change takes time and change is also tough and that requires different steps. So for obvious reasons, agriculture was basically the basic thing. Went to an agriculture and looked into a few areas and we came up with a proposal. So the proposal was bringing this blockchain aspect of to the agriculture space where we can enable the farmers to empower, right? To basically actually be first present in a system and a supply chain, and then interact, learn how actually supply chain and market operates, and then also produce accordingly. Whereas now what you see is the farmer is behind the scene. He does not know what the market wants. He produces something, he sells it, he doesn't get the income. So neither the market benefits because he's behind it and the guy who's producing does not know anything what the market wants, or neither, you know, gain the benefit out of the market. So really it's not benefiting the farmer or the sector itself. So I thought actually the fundamental point of, you know, prosperity for Africa, agriculture, basically transformation, and then also making sure that we have food security globally is truly empowering the farmer and truly recognizing his value and for him to basically gain the return out of that value. So we thought blockchain would actually solve that specific area because it creates this decentralized space where there's no one dominancy, right? You know, the world is dying because there is this power that's basically people fighting against each other. And there is no this equilibrium and equal space where people can interact, can dialogue, because one person feels powerful dominates the others, and this is it. And this is the ecosystem that we're living. And I believe that actually blockchain will change that. And for this project, agriculture is 80% of the capacity in Africa. If we really change Africa, agriculture, I believe it will change Africa, and I believe it will change the world. This was my mind.
Yeah, no, that's it's great stuff you're working on. And I remember the essence of when blockchain started was to allow people at the beginning of the chain to actually get the money, actually be engaged, actually have a business, not being taken advantage of, et cetera, et cetera. And we're noticing in agriculture, it's maybe the biggest play of all using blockchain. And it actually reminds me, there's a couple of parties I'd want to introduce you to that are involved in regenerative soil and also farming in Africa that could be good contacts for you. But along the lines of what you were talking about, how have you been able to bring the right partners in, the right teams in, the the right platforms in to get initiatives like this started, which are absolutely needed, to really make an impact in like food security, water. We talked about energy. I mean, that's a big vision, and it's a big challenge for one person. So how have you been able to build the partnerships and relationships?
For me, it was, to be honest, the leadership in the HR space is like 60% of the project, because my way of leadership, I don't like to dictate, but I like to build ecosystems where I bring people and partners, and where I can actually build the engine, which is the culture, so that people can interact and get on with it. And basically I move on to the next project. And that's always been my leadership style. So coming to the tech space, as you know, techies, they love what they do. They're very passionate. Getting them to work is the toughest part. And 50% of this project is basically tech, developing the blockchain aspect, making sure that people actually relate to the cause and they develop it for you. So I struggled in it because the way I approached it actually is I try to bring a couple of people and flavors into the group, and where I let the engine run on its own and see how they can blend it. And basically, I let people to run the show and build their roles within the project. And anyone that's behind, it's basically, it just either finds on and moves on to a different project. But my way of doing things is I build that ecosystem. I let people to basically work together. But then, you have to bring in the right caliber, right? Because otherwise the project doesn't move. The right caliber for me is now basically looking at CVs, basically looking at how the person engages, because I always say skill doesn't matter, it's character. Skills you can actually learn. So I look at characters, I look at how people actually work with the other, and people actually, do they relate to my cause, or are they here for the money? Because one of my challenges in the beginning was finance. So I go in and I pitch to people, listen, I don't have money, all I have is vision. So are you going to ride the road with me? And then we build this, and then somehow you find yourself something. You build your own role within the project. I'm not going to tell you you're going to be CTO or a CFO, but I can tell you, I know I understand where you want to go, but I'll let you build it. So it took two iterations for me, two iteration of groups to build the right team. And fortunately, I'm very lucky right now. I've got a right caliber of team that actually joined for free and eventually basically made themselves a living out of it eventually. So the ingredient again is really laying out your vision to the people that you want to attract with. Really also pay attention to the people needs. What do they need from you? And basically meet them halfway, because there is my demand, my ambition, and my legacy, or what I put forward, and also people, how do they see themselves in that project, and also what that means for them personally as well, because people can have their own personal issue that would reflect in your project. How do you basically balance those things? And those are the kind of leadership that I actually wanted to play to build the right strong team to drive the project forward.
Do you foresee being able to scale this through Africa and see opportunities in all of Africa for what you're doing?
So ultimately, although I'm just starting on the Horn, the place that I started is very strategic. that's basically connected with the rest of the East African. So it's a corridor, which is why it was my first internet. So definitely it would be an East African platform, definitely. It's not going to be only trading platform, and I can assure you, there's going to be an element to it as well in terms of payment and currency, because what's killing Africa is border. And we want to create that borderless transaction, borderless trade, where people really can trade across. So I think it's going to be difficult to go Africa-wide because it's too huge, but I think I'll reach to the level to East Africa to the minimum.
No, that's awesome. And I like what you're doing in the sense of, we finally come to the point where people realize that you can actually do better economically, financially, if you do good at the same time. It's not anymore about you either have to forego money to do good, or you have to forego having a purpose and making a difference just to make money. I think you've got them, you're harvesting both of those together, it sounds like.
Absolutely, absolutely. The main thing is basically identifying your true compass, like why you're doing this. As you said it earlier, if you know why you're doing, the money follows.
Right.
I always.
No, that's fantastic. And let's talk a little bit about human capital too. You're on the Global Advisory Council for the Knowledge Pledge. How did that come to be? And I would think that there's potentially expertise or knowledge through that could also help you too.
Yeah, exactly. So I got connected to TKP through my board members, but then I think I related to TKP because first I was presented about TKP and I was really excited because, as I told you, TKP is all about building the right caliber and ecosystem, building that engine so that the engine can be replicated across. Right now, it's killing the globe is this silo way of working, right? Which is an inefficiency. So the base thing about TKP is that ecosystem where it brings in different skills and caliber, so that to build something bigger. So that's basically why I got myself involved in. And also, for me, the knowledge that I'm probably going to bring into the table, there is two sides of it. One is I'm very passionate about entrepreneurs. Very passionate about human capital. So there is that aspect and doing good. And there are different areas that I've been working on in terms of empowering entrepreneurs and basically working on a lot of social projects where I can bring that like skills of empathy and what I mentioned to you, understanding problems and especially in the emerging market. The second aspect is around the digital space, because as you know, digital is the way forward. So how do you and my biggest problem skill is because I've been exposed in the digital transformation space for the longest time. Actually, when you talk about digital transformation, it's not just tech, right? How do you bridge that leadership, tech, and all aspects together to bring through change through tech? So I have that skills, which I can actually bring into the TKP, and we can support the cause and the mission of this great TKP.
Yeah, then that's awesome. I also wanted to ask you, kind of relates to everything you're saying. We talk about leaders who care, and one of the things leaders have found out is if they care about their employees, they care about their colleagues, their workers, then generally things work out even better. And I mean, caring about them, there's financial well-being, there's physical well-being, and there's mental well-being for people. And you need all of those to be able to be beyond survival mode, but actually flourishing. How do you manage all that, especially in Ethiopia, in Africa, with COVID going on, with different things like that happening? How do you manage? How do you see yourself and other leaders being able to care about the well-being of people so they can be engaged in the agricultural business? They can be engaged in the projects you're working on, and feel good financially, physically, and mentally.
Absolutely. So I spend most of, let's say, I would say 30% of my time on talking to people, engaging with them on the project level, also on a personal level. So there is this leader that always reminds me of this Indranui. She says one time actually that she always writes a letter once a year to her staff's spouses or family members, because she's trying to go beyond that person, because beyond that person there is family, finance, there is a whole lot of burden. So she's trying to tell the other behind is that I'm there for you, right? So and when you do that, when you go beyond, let's say, that employee, in the background, so there is a whole lot of let's say finance, family issue and everything, and you're telling as a leader that not only you're supporting financially to that individual and employee, you're actually there for the family.
Right.
That's basically, for me, always resonates. I always think about that. So when I build a relationship with my employees, obviously with some sort of limit, is that I try to know about their setup, if there is any issues financially or even family wise. So try to be there for them, just to listen as well, to say to them like, I'm here for you regardless, and we're here in it together. And everything that I do is not just for me, but it's a collective thing. So that basically time that I spend with them is to assure them that they're very valued, and I'll do anything in my power to support them, not only just for them to come in, clock the time or accomplish my objective, but then also to be there for them as a human being. Because I'm here to help the farmer, but then I need to reflect that vision and mission and that values across my partners, across my employees as well. So that's basically the way I manage. Sometimes it might go a little bit off of that, because people, they might take it wrongly, because, but you have to know how to manage those things. So
Right. No, I think it's brilliant strategy. And I've noticed in my travels that, whether it's sports and you have a coach that stands by their player, no matter what, that player will do anything for that coach. And the same thing for what you're talking about. People want to, thing that fills people's hearts and souls more than anything, there's been lots of studies on this, is belonging. And what you're talking about is you're inviting them to belong in that community by caring about them. And it sounds so simple, and it's so brilliantly important at the same time. So yeah, I love that you shared that.
yeah, absolutely. And Indra is my favorite all-time leader. Favorite.
So can you tell me, with everything that's gone on with COVID, with it's just been an interesting, hard 2020, 2021. What are you most grateful for, and what are you most hopeful for?
Grateful for the simplest thing that I can actually, spend time with family, and also be closer to family a lot more now, because work takes a whole lot of your time, and then also for the simplest thing that I'm actually alive, so that I can actually live out my purpose and see, to see the project that I started come to completion. So those are something that I'm grateful for. But something that I'm hopeful for, I feel like the world has gone mad. COVID, war all over the world. I feel like I hope the world will come to some sort of consensus to realize actually we're only living here for 100 years max. And for that 100 years, I think it would be nice if we just, be happy, love each other, and be peaceful, and understand each other and learn how to dialogue, and just do what you're meant to do, and just take your lane, and it will take you. You don't need to fight. You don't need to battle. So I just hope that the world will get to that consensus. That's what I'm hopeful for.
Amen is all I can say to that. Amen. That's yeah, it's a lot better way of investing our energy than the alternative. That's for sure. So hey, thank you so much for sharing that. You're wonderful. You're doing great stuff, and keep making a difference, and keep being one of the leaders who care.
Yes, I'm into that.